Quiet, please.
Today's story, written and directed by Willis Cooper and featuring Ernest Chappell, is called Cornelia. I'll tell you everything from the very start. I haven't told it to anybody before, as you know. If I knew nobody would believe it, then maybe you won't either. Not that it'll do any good if you do believe it, nor for that matter any harm if you don't. You've been a good friend, Alan, and the least I can do is tell you the whole thing. It wouldn't have done any good at all to tell you before. Now it's too late for anything. So, you've known me only, how long is it? Less than 6 months. You never knew Cornelia. That's good. You can go out to Lakeside Cemetery sometime and have a look at her tombstone. It says she died the 29th of August, 1937. It's a very nice tombstone. I paid $750 for it. And I never spent $750 so gladly in all my life. Cornelia and I were married a little more than 8 years. Cornelia was a year and 2 months older than I. Did you ever have a childhood sweetheart, Alan? In school? Grammar school and through high school? A girl maybe that you watched grow up from pigtails to hair ribbons and onto a page boy bob, from pinafores through midi blouses to a white graduation dress. A girl that shared algebra and Plymouth Rock and the 3 parts of Gaul with you. There's a kind of shadow of marriage in the relationship of kids who share all their school days together, Ellen. From the first pencil boxes to a rolled-up high school diploma and a handshake from the superintendent of schools. 6 hours a day together, 9 months a year for 12 years. Thinking the same thoughts, facing the same problems. It is a little like some ancient fundamental marriage. You know what I mean, Alan? And I feel sorry for people who haven't had that experience, if there are any. I'm glad I had it. You didn't know Barbara, of course. Barbara is just a name. Like Cornelia is just a name. I don't know when it was that Barbara and I first knew we were in love with each other. When we talked about it, it seemed we'd always been in love. And yet there was no beginning that we could remember. And there's no end either. We were juniors in high school, the year that Cornelia moved to our town. Barbara and I were a kind of standing joke among our schoolmates. We were the heavy romance, the dependables. We were the old faithfuls of all the couples in school. Do you remember from your own school days, Alan? There's always one couple like that. Everyone expects them to graduate, get married, then live happily ever after. Sometimes they do. In our case, you know all about that. At least you know we didn't live happily ever after. Cornelia was a beautiful girl. No, I won't describe it to you, because anything I'd say would merely be the description of a beautiful woman. So you imagine her any way you want her. You never saw her. You'll never see her. She died 10 years ago. Cornelia could have had practically any boy in school she wanted. She knew that, of course. The whole school knew it. She took her time. Paul Loman, he was football captain. He had 2 dates with her. Johnny Martins, who thought he could sing. Johnny lasted part of one evening with her. Cornelia sang, too. Eddie Braden with his Jordan convertible. Cornelia said nothing. Ray Allison, Bill Shirley, Shorty Lawrence with his patent leather hair. They all fell, and Cornelia laughed. Only I was thinking. I guess it was that afternoon in Chris Barrett's ice cream parlor. I always thought Cornelia didn't know Barbara and I were in the next booth. I always thought that till 4 years later one night. She told me she knew we were there. Maybe that was why she talked so loud.
Because I made up my mind. I've known all along.
She must have felt the silence that got all over the place as a dozen couples strained to hear Cornelia's choice. Even then, Alan, she possessed some strange power over people. Somebody dropped an ice cream spoon on the other side of the room. And that was the only sound except Cornelia.
Gordon's my boy.
I smiled at Barbara. But Barbara wasn't smiling back. She was listening. And I had never seen that look on her face before.
Why, I'll take him away from her. Does she think she can keep him when I want him?
I reached for Barbara's hand. But Barbara's hand wasn't there. I looked into Barbara's eyes, but Barbara was staring somewhere into the future. And what I saw in her eyes was yes, it was Ellen. She is 17 years old. But she loved me. And she was afraid. And I was afraid. I was afraid of that voice.
Does she think she can keep him when I want him?
Barbara had a headache when I came to take her to see Hell's Angels at the Idle Hour that night, and I knew I should have stayed at home with her, but I wanted to see that picture. Remember it, Alan? It was a great picture in those days. Barbara never did see it. Cornelia did, though. It made a good subject for conversation between us a couple of days later after school. And before I knew it, I was walking home with Cornelia. Then Cornelia was singing. Remember that thing from Blossom Time?
You are my song of love, melody immortal, echo of paradise.
How many times I've heard that song. Sticky, sugary, saccharine, sentimental. Stolen from that beautiful theme in the Unfinished. But that first time, it was a love song of a beautiful girl. And a love song to me. Barbara and I had never talked as loud. I found it very intriguing to be with a girl who talks constantly of love. It is intriguing. And flattering when you're 17. Oh, I saw Barbara. I saw her often. But I saw Cornelia, too. Cornelia saw her. Oftener and oftener. On the way home nights from Barbara's house, I'd hear a voice.
You are my song of love.
And my steps would turn down the other street. And sometimes I'd start at the Barbara's house.
Echo of paradise.
And I'd stop. Wanting to go away, but held by something that I didn't recognize then. Though I know all about it now. And gradually, Cornelia drew me away from Barbara. I don't believe she loved me, Alan. There were times when she laughed at me cruelly for my clumsiness, for my youthful embarrassment. But always she was weaving some sort of spell about me, putting new barriers between me and Barbara. Barbara didn't fight back, Ellen. Barbara loved me. I know how Barbara felt. If Barbara thought I loved someone else more than I did her, you've heard of that, of course. Sometimes it works. Or perhaps Barbara was willing to wait to let me have a fling, to be waiting for me when it ended. Barbara loved me. And through it all, Alan, I loved her. Oh, I know what you're thinking. I was a fool. Haven't you ever been a fool? Haven't you ever got yourself involved in something you knew wasn't right and kept on with it, having your conscience with the thought that it won't last forever? And you can go back and start over again whenever you want to. I was a prisoner. What? Oh, of course, I know it now. I didn't realize it then. My folks had money. Cornelia's people had nothing much. Cornelia knew what she was doing, and she knew how to do it. She was going to have me come hell or high water, Alan, and she wasn't going to let Barbara have me. She knew me better than I knew myself. Women like Cornelia always do. And she knew how to trap me. The day came when she sprang the trap. Barbara and I said, had never spoken again. Cornelia spoke of love. You've never had that happen to you, have you, Alan? That's the one. Especially if you believe it. Barbara had been away for 2 weeks, visiting a cousin somewhere in Ireland. Cornelia waited till the day before Barbara came back.
Gordon, what are we going to do?
Going to do? What do you mean?
Barbara's coming back tomorrow.
Yes, I know.
What are we going to do about it?
Well, I don't know, Cornelia.
She's not going to take you away from me.
Why, I'm not.
She's not going to have you, I tell you.
What's the matter with you?
Gordon, listen to me. You love me.
Cornelia.
I know it's wrong for me to say it, Gordon, but I won't let her come between us. I know why you've never asked me to marry you, Gordon. It's because you think you'll be hurting her pride. But, Gordon, don't you see how unimportant that is?
Why, I never thought...
We can't let her feelings stand between us and our happiness, Gordon. I love you, Gordon, and you love me. And, Gordon...
What?
You do love me, don't you, Gordon?
Why, Cornelia,
You want to marry me, don't you? We can't go on this way forever, never saying anything, never allowing ourselves to be happy.
Look, Cornelia,
Gordon,
listen.
darling, let's stop fooling each other. Let's not let somebody else break up our happiness. Gordon, it's your sleep.
Cornelia.
Gordon, darling, I love you. I love you.
It was that simple, that easy. The honorable young man could do no less than promise to marry the girl. I bought her a ring. Barbara sent back my high school friend. Cornelia and I were married a year later. And that's the first chapter. Now, take a look at us after we were married. Take a look at Cornelia and me after 6 months of marriage. In our new home out on Prospect Heights with a new car in the garage and the new furniture in the house and the happily married couple at home.
I don't want to be kissed.
But, Cornelia...
Can't you stop calling me all the time? Who do you think I am? Your friend Barbara?
Cornelia?
Oh, so that bothers you, does it? What were you doing talking to her this afternoon?
Cornelia was strictly a matter of business.
Business, huh? That's a fine story.
Cornelia, I can tell you every word she said.
Father would have brought the bonds in himself, Gordon. But you know, he sprained his ankle last week and he's still in bed. He said you had to have them today, so I thought I'd drop them by.
My hand touched hers as she handed me the paper.
I'll have to be running along now. Do give my best to Cornelia.
I don't believe a word you say. And if I ever catch you running around with her. I'll make life so miserable for you both.
I kept my bargain, Alan. I was still young enough to have illusions about honesty and honor and all those old-fashioned virtues. I crossed streets when I saw Bob. I never mentioned her name. I didn't have to. Cornelia did that.
What are you thinking about now? Your friend Barbara?
I'd say trying hard. You look nice tonight, Cornelia, darling.
At least I look better than that dish-faced Barbara you used to run around with.
And at last I had to say something about it to her. I said, Cornelia, listen. I married you because we said we loved each other. I've been faithful to you. I intend to be faithful to you as long as we're married. But I've got to say this. If you keep throwing Barbara's name at me... Look, Cornelia, you know perfectly well that there's nothing between Barbara and me. But if you were trying to force me to see her, there's no better way than for you to keep reminding me of her. Why do you hate her so, Cornelia?
All right. You want to know, good. You ask me, and I'll tell you. I've got good reason to hate her. I hate her because she's the one person in the world that might take you away from me.
Cornelia, you mean that you do...
Let's not talk about love between you and me, Gordon. I'm not going to let anybody take you away from me for a very simple reason. Even you ought to be smart enough to know what that reason is.
I'm afraid I'm not, Cornelia.
Why, Gordon, you're security for me. Just as long as you have your money, I'm the girl that'll stay with you. That's all you need to me. Is that clear enough?
You don't mean that, Cornelia.
Why do you think I took you away from her?
You said...
What I said then and what I say now are two different things. You might as well make the best of it, Gordon. As long as you have money, you're stuck with me. Oh, I'll not create any scandal. I wouldn't give you grounds for divorce for anything. I'm with you, Gordon, for good. Till death do us part, the man said. I'll be with you forever.
And the way she said, forever, was like a clanging bell in my heart.
And so you want to know why I hate Barbara. I'll tell you, Gordon. It's because I know you still love Barbara. And she loves you. And she's the one minute...
I love Barbara, and Barbara loves me. It was a bolt of lightning to me, Alan. Of course I love Barbara. Who is this woman who took her away from me?
I'm your lawful wedded wife, Gordon. Don't forget that.
How could I forget? And how could I forget the love I had known? For I knew in a flash that Barbara still did love me, and that I would always love her. And I was married to a woman who would be with me as long as I had my money. Now, let's speak of Ireland. Remember October 1929? I came home that Friday night. Cornelia was waiting for me at the door.
What about it, Gordon? Is the market any better? Are we going to be all right? Gordon, answer me. Answer me.
We're not going to be all right, Cornelia.
What? Gordon.
There's not a cent left.
I don't believe you.
It's time to leave, Cornelia. The money's all gone.
No.
She's had a very bad stroke, Gordon. Will she? She'll be a helpless invalid all the rest of her life. Shall I tell you now of the years between? Shall I tell you of a nagging, unforgiving woman whose every waking hour was devoted to hating?
I'll never forgive you for what you've done to me, Gordon.
Striking at me with every means at her disposal?
I don't care what you're doing. You come home this instant. I don't care if you lose your job or not.
Maligning me to the few friends we have left.
Running around with that Barbara. And he thinks I don't know it.
Striking through at her like a vicious, wounded beast.
I tell you, you better leave my husband alone. You're not going to take him away from me. Never, never. Never, 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 never.
A bitter, disappointed invalid with long hours alone to think of new ways to hate me for what had happened to her. Long hours alone to plot her revenges against me. And I tried. I nursed her day and night. I cadged extra work for my friends, work I could do at home at night for another few dollars for. I made every sacrifice I could think of, and nothing was enough to satisfy.
Get up and get me some fresh water. I'm thirsty. Wake up. Go and get me some cigarettes. If I can't sleep, you're not going to sleep. I saw the way you looked at me. Well, you're not going to get rid of me. I'll live on and on and on, and I'll hate you and hate you and hate you. And Barbara, she thinks she's waiting for you. She thinks I'll die and she'll have you. I'll never let her have you, Gordon. You hear me? I'll never let her have you.
5 years ago. 5 long years. What could I do? I could wait, Alan. I could wait and hope. I could listen to Cornelia.
I hate you.
And I could wait.
You want me to die.
I can wait for you to die, Cornelia.
I'll never die, Gordon. I'll always be with you.
No, you won't, Cornelia. Everybody has to die. Everybody has to die. Don't they, Alan? Cornelia and Barbara and you and me. Do you think people stay dead, Alan? I'll never forget the night when you died. It was like a scene from a play, one of those plays I used to do years ago, the death scene in the old castle. There was something about the house that night that reminded me of those old plays. Even before I knew that was Cornelia's night to die. There was almost always a storm outside the windows in the old plays. And that night, one of those sudden, wild summer storms gathered and struck. And there was always a grandfather's clock. And hours on the staircase rang 7 as I ran upstairs to close the windows against the wind and the driving rain. And there was always the sound of a shrill telephone bell off stage in the old plays. And hours began to ring right on cue. And the last touch of the tragedy was there, too. The lights went out. We had everything out. Even the mad woman raving away in the darkness as I groped my way to her room. Her voice lashing at me like the storm that beat at the windows of the darkened house. And in my heart I said, die then, Cornelia, this is the time. And again that hideous song as I stumbled toward the room. And again I said, die, Cornelia, die and never come back. And the song stopped then. And I was alone.
I'll die, Gordon. I'll die and I'll come back. I'll never let you go.
And the thunder crashed again. And the lights came on. And Cornelia. And then the last touch of the melodrama. Yes?
Gordon, are you all right?
Barbara had never called me before.
I didn't mean to call you Gordon, but I had to. Forgive me, but something made me call. Gordon. Gordon, are you there? Gordon!
Cornelia is there. We were unashamed about it, Alan. Barbara and I were married 2 months later. We had so many years, so many days, so many hours to make up for. Yes, of course we all dropped those years out of our memories. Cornelia was more than dead. She had vanished, And there wasn't a trace of her around either.
I love you so, Gordon. I love you so much. I'm afraid.
What are you afraid of?
I shouldn't say that. It's silly, isn't it? But it's so perfect that... Gordon, nothing can happen to us.
No, of course not, sweetheart. We're going to live happily ever after.
Happily ever after.
I wonder.
There was a sudden chill in my heart as she said that. There was a different look for a moment in her eyes as she said that. I remembered it a long time after. I remembered it the morning I came downstairs to breakfast and Barbara was singing.
You are my song of love, melody more.
Barbara!
Why, what's the matter, Gordon?
What were you singing?
I didn't notice, dear. So what's the matter with you?
Barbara, never sing that song again. You hear me?
I don't know what you mean, darling.
Don't you like the song?
That wasn't Barbara's voice. Barbara spoke, and it wasn't her voice.
Why, Gordon.
You look as if you're afraid of me, darling.
And it was Cornelia's eyes that looked at me out of Barbara. And I knew. I didn't believe, but I knew. It couldn't happen, but it did. And there was a time, Teresa. What could I tell Barbara? Could I tell her that the soul of another woman was taking possession of her? How could I tell her? Was this Barbara, or was it... I'd begun to think that it was hallucination that I imagined. And I tried to laugh at myself. And I watched her. And perhaps my eyes on her began to turn and sleep. And at last opened her eyes. And smiled.
Darling, are you still awake? Why don't you go to sleep? And I love you, sweetheart.
And she closed her eyes. And she spoke again.
I'll never let you go.
Barbara!
I'll live on and on and on.
And I called her name again. Barbara! And she opened her eyes and spoke again.
I'll never let her have you, Gordon.
And the voice was Cornelia's. And the eyes were Cornelia's. And she laughed at me. My hands went to her throat. To Cornelia's throat. And when the blackness lifted, Barbara lay there. You did everything you could have. You were good in the journey to the senses and the ones I had. But there was nothing you could do I couldn't help. Cornelia had a revenge, didn't she? I know. I hear it. It was good of you to come and share my last half hour on this Christmas. I'm almost happy about it. Maybe I'll be meeting Barbara. Or maybe it'll be Cornelia. You are listening to Quiet Please. It was written and directed by Willis Cooper. The man who spoke to you was Ernest Chappell. And Ann Seymour played Cornelia. Barbara was Peggy Stanley and Walter Blackford the Doctor. The music was composed and played by Gene Crosby. Now, for a word about next week's Quiet Please, here is our writer-director, Willis Cooper.
Next week's story is about a man who tried to work magic. It's called I Remember Tomorrow.
And so, until next week, I am quietly here. Ernestine.